James was a 10-year-old boy burdened with questions that haunted his every waking moment. Why didn't my mother want me? Where did she go? These weren't the kind of questions a child should ever have to ask, yet they became his constant companions. Each passing year, the silence surrounding his past only grew louder, and every unanswered question felt like another crack in his fragile heart. He spent countless nights staring at the ceiling, imagining a woman who might have held him once, loved him once, but left him behind. Was it something he had done? Was he too much or not enough? The thought gnawed at him, forcing him to piece together fragments of a past he didn't fully understand. The faint memory of a lullaby or the blurry image of a smiling face haunted his dreams, slipping further from reach each time he tried to hold on. James never imagined there would come a day when he would face the truth head-on. The answers he had sought for so long would come crashing into his life, not with clarity or relief, but with a weight that would change everything he thought he knew. The courtroom held its breath as 10-year-old James stood before the judge. His voice trembled as he spoke 4 words that pierced the silence. "You're my mom." The judge froze, tears filling her eyes. But it was her reaction that left everyone speechless, and then, in a voice breaking with emotion, she whispered, "I was forced to give you up." Everyone was shocked. What followed revealed a heartbreaking truth. A story of pain, sacrifice, and a mother's love buried beneath years of separation. What could drive a mother to give up her own child? The answer would leave everyone in the room stunned. James was a 10-year-old boy with a broken past. Every year, he had asked questions that no child should ever have to ask. Why didn't my mother want me? Where did she go? Every birthday, every Christmas, every school event was a reminder that there was a piece of him missing. Piece he didn't know how to find. He was raised in foster care, bouncing between homes, always wondering if the woman who had given birth to him had truly loved him. But then, something changed. After years of searching, James finally got a lead. A name, a location, the feeling that maybe, just maybe, he could find her, the woman who had given him life. His lawyer arranged for a hearing, and now, in a courtroom filled with strangers, James stood ready to finally face his truth. The courtroom was tense. James stood, his small frame trembling slightly as he waited for the judge to speak. His lawyer presented the evidence, a brief explanation of the case, and the connection they believed had been made. The case had been filed based on a single lead, a name, a photograph, and an old record. But James wasn't sure. How could he know for sure? He had seen so many adults who promised him answers, only to disappoint him. What if this was just another dead end? What if this woman wasn't his mother at all? And even if this woman was his mother, would she want to meet him? Would she want to see the son she left behind? Or would she deny him? The pain of uncertainty consumed his heart. His foster parents had been kind, but they weren't his real family. He had spent too many nights dreaming of what it would feel like to be loved by his birth mother, to know that he wasn't alone. The tension in the room was heavy. James's heart pounded in his chest, each second feeling like an eternity. His hands shook, not just from fear, but from the overwhelming weight of what was about to happen next. The moment came. The judge, a stern woman in her late 40s, sat across from James. The room was silent. His lawyer began speaking about the case again, but James could barely concentrate on the words. His mind was on the woman sitting across the room. The one the lawyer had said could be his mother. The woman who had left him without an explanation, without an apology, without a reason. As James stood there, the moment came. He couldn't take it anymore. In a soft, shaky voice that barely made it past his lips, he finally spoke. "You're my mom." The entire room fell silent. The judge was shocked, staring at him with wide eyes. The lawyers and the audience were stunned. No one knew how to react. James's voice was full of uncertainty, but there was a strength behind it. He had waited so long for this moment that now that it was happening, he wasn't going to let it slip away. The judge remained motionless for a long moment, her face unreadable, almost as if she were trying to process what he said. Was it true? Was it a mistake? James's heart pounded as he waited for an answer. His whole life had led him to this one moment, and all he could do now was pray that it would all make sense. Suddenly, everything in the courtroom seemed to freeze. The judge, who had been a figure of authority, stoic and unwavering throughout the entire hearing, now looked completely different. Her usual professional expression softened, and for the first time, she showed something raw and vulnerable. The tough exterior she had worn all these years cracked, revealing the depth of emotion that lay hidden behind it. Her lip trembled ever so slightly, and for a brief moment, she glanced down at the table as if searching for the right words. Then, as if the weight of the moment had become too much to bear, she whispered just loud enough for James to hear. "I was forced to give you up. I didn't want to, but I had no choice." A stunned silence filled the room. James stood frozen in place, his mind struggling to process what he had just heard. His heart raced, his thoughts spinning in a whirlwind of confusion. Was she really saying what he thought she was saying? The judge's voice cracked as she continued, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I didn't want to. I loved you more than anything. But there was no choice. They made me leave you, James." James's chest tightened as the weight of her words sank in. His world, once so certain in its emptiness, now felt like it was unraveling before his eyes. The woman he had been searching for, the one he had wondered about for so long, wasn't just any stranger. She was the very judge standing in front of him, the one who had been overseeing his case all this time. He stared at her, his mind racing with more questions than answers. How could this be? Why hadn't she ever tried to find him? Why had it taken so long for him to learn the truth? The courtroom was utterly still, as if everyone there was holding their breath, waiting for what would happen next. The room had gone so quiet that James could almost hear the beating of his own heart in his ears. But despite the shock and the whirlwind of emotions inside him, he couldn't look away from the woman who, in this moment, was both his mother and a stranger. Her words hung in the air, painful and heartbreaking, but they were also the beginning of something else, something that James wasn't sure he was ready for. His mind and his heart were at war. The truth was out, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a deep ache, a longing for answers that still couldn't be fully understood. The judge's eyes locked with his, filled with regret and sorrow. "I never stopped thinking about you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never wanted to leave you. I wish I could have changed things." The room held its breath, as if the very air was thick with the weight of all the unspoken emotions that had been building for years. James stood still, his mind shattered. He was trying to process her words. The judge's eyes were filled with tears now, and she seemed to be lost in the memory of a painful past. "Do you remember the night I had to leave you?" the judge asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You were just a baby, but the social services came to my house and told me I wasn't fit to raise you. They told me that because of the violence in my home and my struggles with addiction, I was unfit to care for you. They said if I didn't sign the papers to put you in foster care, they would take you away anyway, and I wouldn't ever get to see you again." She paused, taking a deep breath, her face racked with pain. "I was so lost, James. I was caught in a world of addiction, of bad decisions. But I loved you with every fiber of my being. The moment they took you from me, I felt my heart break. I never wanted to let you go, but I thought it would be better for you. I thought I was saving you from the life I had, one of pain and suffering. I thought I would be able to get clean and one day come back for you. But I never could." James's heart pounded, his body trembling. This was the truth he had been seeking all his life. The courtroom was silent, everyone in surprise of what had just unfolded. James didn't know what to feel. Part of him wanted to run to the judge and embrace her, but another part of him felt so much anger. Anger for the years he had spent without her, for the pain he had endured, thinking she didn't care. But there was something else, something deeper. His mother had loved him. Even in her worst moments, she had loved him. And that love had never wavered, even though life had torn them apart. For the first time in his life, he knew the truth. He wasn't abandoned because he wasn't wanted. He was loved. by the mother who had no choice but to let him go. The judge wiped away a tear, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I'm so sorry, James. I failed you. I hope you can forgive me." For a moment, the courtroom was silent. James looked at her, his own tears now streaming down his face. Slowly, he stepped forward, his small frame trembling as he whispered, "I've missed you so much." The judge couldn't hold back anymore. She stood up from her bench and rushed toward him. As she knelt and wrapped him in her arms, the boy held her tightly, sobbing into her shoulder. "I forgive you," he choked out. "I just want my mom." The room was filled with the sound of their cries, and even the most stoic faces in the courtroom couldn't hold back their tears. For the first time in years, mother and son were together again, holding onto each other as if they would never let go. In that moment, all the pain, all the years of separation, melted away. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't erase the past, but it was a new beginning, a second chance to be a family. Now that the story has come to an end, we find ourselves thinking about James and the overwhelming emotions he must have been feeling. After everything he went through, after all the pain and confusion, what do you think he was feeling in that moment of reunion with his mother? Do you think he understood why she had to make the decision she did? Or do you feel like he deserved something different, something better? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, because your story might be the one that resonates with someone else who's experienced something similar. Whether it's forgiveness, understanding, or healing, your perspective can make a difference. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more real stories that touch the heart and bring us closer together.